I think we will go ahead and get started. I was given the, I guess, option, not really option. I was told I was introducing this current speaker who's going to talk on ABA therapy because Michael is our son Richard's BCBA, who has worked with him for almost 3 years. Richard is our son. He's 13. He had a left hemispherectomy at the age of 11 months for hemimegalencephaly. And we figured that having a behavior analyst who has worked with our children talk would be very beneficial. So I sort of pressured him to put this presentation together. Michael Fantetti is a BCBA who is currently working on his PhD. And he's a pretty amazing guy and has done some amazing things with our kids and has helped us work on a lot of behaviors. So I'm going to let him talk to you guys, and I told him that we'll ask him all the questions and interrupt him. So hopefully we get some good information today, and it'll lead to some good collaboration in the future.
Yes. I just realized you guys can't see my screen, can you? We were chit-chatting all that time, and I never put it on screen share.
Oh.
How's that?
Ta-da! We can see it now, yes.
Yeah. All right, cool. Oh, and I got you guys back too. I couldn't see you guys for a long time. So, all right. So like Jacinda said, my name is Michael. I just wanted to start by saying thank you for the opportunity to get to talk to you guys, even through Zoom. This is so cool to disseminate ABA to a new crowd. I'm sure some of you are familiar with ABA, but this is kind of new for the field of ABA. So I'm just really honored to speak at this conference. The main objective of my talk today is to give kind of just an introductory explanation of ABA, and then talk a little bit about how understanding ABA can be beneficial for everyday life. And like Jacinda said, please feel free to interrupt with questions. Someone will have to yell because I can barely see you guys, but I'll stop if someone gets my attention. So I wanted to start with the obvious question, what is ABA? And I grabbed a textbook answer. It's the science in which tactics derived from the principles of behavior are applied systematically to improve socially significant behavior, and experimentation is used to identify variables responsible for behavior change. So that's obviously a mouthful. I wanted to go through a couple key points of this. The first one is that ABA is a science, and you'll hear me say this a couple times throughout the talk. ABA is not a bag of tricks. This is a science. It's based on the experimental science of behaviorism that was kind of discovered and talked a lot about in the early 1900s with B.F. Skinner. He refined it up until his death in the 1990s. And it continues to be refined today throughout our several journals that behavior analysts publish in. So I really wanted to drive home that it's science and it's not just one treatment to use with a specific population. The second point I wanted to grab out of this is the sentence, experimentation is used to identify variables responsible for behavior change. I know a lot of you in this audience are parents, and this sounds scary. It's like experimentation is used to, I don't want my kid going through experimentation. And I know you guys are a really educated bunch. I want you to understand that experimentation is referring to using experimental designs to make sure we are pinpointing the variables responsible for behavior change. We are not using experimental procedures. We are using experimental designs to determine what will best work for your child or the child that we're working with. The third key point I wanted to grab out of this is that we're working to improve socially significant behavior. And this really leads into the ethical foundations of ABA. So ABA changes socially significant behavior, meaning that it must be meaningful for the individual receiving services, the family or caregiver of that individual, the individual applying the change, which in this case would be me, and also the community or society at large. This comes up occasionally when we're talking about things like, say, I don't know, I've had parents tell me that they really want their kid to say please when the kid doesn't reliably ask for things. And sometimes I'll have to be like, whoa, pump the brakes. I know that's really important to you, but it's more meaningful for your child and the community and everyone who's going to interact with your child that they are able to reliably request other things they need rather than, focusing on something like manners. So it really is a focus on being meaningful to everyone, especially for that child or individual receiving the services. In that same vein, we are always looking to give the individual the most independence, integrity, dignity, and freedom that is possible, whether that be, freedom from problem behavior or freedom from, not being able to go to school because they aren't toilet trained, or even freedom, to be in the least restrictive environment because we've gotten rid of some of that aggression or, some of the other problem behavior that might come up. We do this by offering that individual choices and using thoughtful, empirically derived decision making for all the behaviors we target. So ABA has a couple of main aims. Again, we like to establish and increase socially significant behaviors. So this might include things like increasing functional communication skills, daily living skills, academic skills, social skills, visual perception skills, and even play and leisure skills, giving that individual, building things that they like to do and are able to do. Did I hear a question or something?
No, just a little one who's making noise.
Okay, no worries.
Like kids, he's used to it.
So on the other side of that, we also want to decrease harmful or potentially dangerous behaviors. This could be things like aggression, self-injury, skin picking, pica, or perseverative speech and stereotypy. Stereotypy being, some of that self-stimulatory behavior we see. Oftentimes, as a behavior analyst, I get questions about this last one, and that's why I marked it. Back in the old days, the goal was to make kids look normal. And I want to stress that ABA has really gotten away from the idea that kids need to look normal. I mean, even that terminology is dated and, obviously we don't like to use that. Really what we're looking to do when I say perseverative speech and stereotypy as a target is make sure that we're decreasing these things when they are preventing learning or creating dangerous situations. So say, for instance, I have a child who shakes their head back and forth regularly and does this, walking downstairs. So she's often falling and hurting herself on stairs. I might look to decrease perseverative speech or stereotypy in that context, but still allow access to it in other contexts so we're not taking away something the individual enjoys. So what does all of this mean in the context of helping children with physical or intellectual disabilities? Well, we do a lot of things that are pretty different from your normal teaching. So this can be things like individualized teaching procedures. Every child that we interact with, because we're setting their goals, to focus on the things that are most meaningful for them. They're all individualized. All the goals are individualized. The goals target behaviors that will lead to the most safety and independence for those kids. And we used evidence, data-driven decision making to make those changes. Because of all this, ultimately, we see a lot of progress on meaningful skills, which is just really great. So the next question is, how does ABA accomplish this? What makes us different? So I've talked a little bit about how we're based on science. This is kind of like a meaty part of the presentation. I wanted to give just a crash course in what ABA is. And I know some of you in the audience are probably already familiar with a lot of this stuff. So I'll try to be quick. So our first crash course section is kind of like principles, the ABCs of behavior. So the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence. Behavior associated and signaled by what comes before the behavior. What comes before is the antecedent. The behavior is whatever the organism does, and the consequence is what follows. And behavior is either strengthened or weakened by what follows. I like to kind of go back to that science idea for a second. A lot of areas of psychology focus on theories, and you might hear the term the theory of behaviorism. I like to point out that behaviorism isn't a theory as much as it is a rule. For people that aren't as familiar, sometimes I make the comparison to gravity. Like it's operating on everyone's behavior, whether you know it or not, whether you understand it or not. And there are very few circumstances where it's not interacting with you in some way. So that's whether it's, working with a kid and reinforcing their behavior with antecedents and consequences, whether it's, husbands and wives reinforcing each other's behavior and punishing each other's behavior. It's working all the time. It's always going. And you don't have to understand it, but it helps if you do. So again, I'm going to try to get through this meaty part pretty quickly. When the consequence delivered strengthens behavior, we refer to that as reinforcement. So that can be either removing something that the individual doesn't like. So say, for example, a loud alarm is ringing and I do something to turn it off. That strengthens the behavior of turning it off because I don't like the sound of that alarm. We consider that negative reinforcement. It could also be adding something that the individual does like. So, hey, I hate doing the dishes, but I get a fresh $20 bill whenever I do the dishes. Sweet. That's positive reinforcement. So when a consequence delivered weakens the behavior, that's called punishment. This could be removing something that the individual likes. So say, for instance, I have two boys and they're playing video games and they start arguing and punching each other. And I say, all right, that's the end of video games. And that weakens the behavior of them fighting in the future. Then that's negative punishment. It could also be adding something that the individual doesn't like. So say same example, and instead of removing video games, I just lay into them and say, you guys know what? You are screwing around and you shouldn't be. You guys are going to get extra chores. I'm adding something that they don't like. We consider that positive punishment. And our last principle we'll talk about briefly is extinction. So when no consequence is delivered and it weakens behavior because that behavior was previously reinforced, it's called extinction. So you can think about this in the context of the classic example of a pop machine or a soda machine. I don't know what you guys call it out in Utah. You go to the soda machine and you put the money in and you push the button and nothing happens. What do? Well, you go through this little burst in your behavior where your behavior momentarily increases in intensity, where you might jam the button or you hit some other buttons or you hit the coin return, or sometimes you even shake the machine. And then you realize that you're not going to get that reinforcer that you normally get. And eventually the behavior dies out, it goes away, it weakens. That's what we refer to as extinction. Those are our main principles for our crash course. Our next section is schedules. I wanted to touch on schedules, even though I don't touch on it much in the rest of the presentation, because I think it's valuable for parents to pick up on some of this stuff. So a continuous schedule would be something that you want when you're building new skills. And this refers to reinforcing every single instance of a behavior. To contrast that, an intermittent schedule is when you are reinforcing every few instances of a behavior. And this is great for maintaining previously learned skills. While it's great for parents to know this, a lot of parents are already really good at this. So an example I always use to talk about this is, say, your kid is learning their first words and they come up and they say, "Mama," and mom starts tearing up. She's so excited. Everyone's celebrating. And, that reinforcement, the kid picks up on the smile and is happy and starts saying, "Mama, mama, mama." And every time everyone's happy and celebrating. And, that's great for like a couple days or a week. And then it almost automatically starts to go down a little bit. It starts to fade out into that intermittent schedule where it's every few instances of the behavior are being reinforced. Because again, we don't want to put that behavior on extinction and not reinforce it, but we want to maintain it at the level it's currently at. So we're going to use an intermittent schedule. Our last section of our little crash course is the function of behavior. To contrast the function with something, we're going to contrast it with the topography. So the topography is what the shape of the behavior is, versus the function, why a behavior occurs. There's four main functions of behavior: attention, so doing it for, whether it's positive or negative attention, doing it to get some attention that you wouldn't have otherwise. Access to tangibles, so it could be access to toys or food or activities that you wouldn't get without engaging in that behavior. Escape or avoidance of a demand. So, getting out of doing your math homework is escape from the demand of math homework. And then finally, automatic or self-stimulatory. So this is when the individual is engaging in behavior just because it gives them some sort of sensory or preferred feeling. A lot of individuals engage in this kind of behavior without even realizing it, whether it be, pen clicking or hair twirling or tapping your foot. That self-stimulatory behavior that you kind of do just because you like it. So that's our little crash course. And I wanted to end it by saying, these principles have been derived from experiments for over 100 years. And this is what applied behavior analysis uses to effectively change behavior. We combine these in various ways to, again, get rid of undesired behavior or harmful or dangerous behavior and increase the skills we want to see, like that functional communication or building physical skills or life skills, daily living skills. So I just want to pause for a second and say again, and I know I sound like a broken record, but ABA is for everyone. A lot of people hear ABA and think autism or kids with developmental disabilities. It's not just a bag of tricks. It's not just for individuals with disabilities. It is science and it's systematic and it holds true in almost every facet of life. So I just really want to drive that home. If you leave here with one thing today, hopefully this is it, even though I'd like it if you left with more than one thing today. So how do we address behavior problems and teach in a way that sets us apart? Well, I've already given you some of the principles and some of the mentality we take, but I kind of wanted to go through, 4 or 5 quick examples and talk a little bit about the steps we would take to solve a problem and what you can do at home to solve some of these problems. So I've never used this acronym before. I actually just came up with it for the first time while I was putting these slides together because I found that I kept using these terms over and over again. So my advice to you is to assess, consider, and teach. So in every circumstance, I want you to assess what the reinforcers are for the child and for you, and really look at what's going on in the environment. Consider your options. So weigh out what different ways you might teach the correct behavior or get rid of the wrong behavior, and then move on to that teaching. And then ultimately continue assessing. ACT doesn't sound as good as ACT, but ultimately you want to continue assessing to make sure what you're doing is having the desired effect and is working. So the first situation I wanted to talk about was in the case of aggression or self-injury. So here's our situation. Our kiddo is playing with toys on the floor and their parents ask them to put away their toys. They start to do it while they whine a little bit, and then suddenly they begin to bang their head on the floor. Parent immediately goes to block them from banging their head on the floor and starts to say, "Oh, it's okay. It's fine. You don't have to do that. You're all right. You're all right." The individual calms down and the parent leaves the room. So I want to start by, again, assessing the function of behavior. And I labeled it step 1, but it's really multiple steps. So again, we're referring to the function of behavior. The 4 main ones are attention, escape, tangible, and automatic. Well, this one's probably not automatic because it's happening in a social context where the individual is angered by something that a parent did or said and then calms down with the comfort of the parent. So we can probably rule that one out. That leaves us with escape, attention, and tangible. So to test this, we might do what is called a functional analysis. So again, this is what a board certified behavior analyst might do. Functional analysis is a method, again, it goes back to that experimental design in order to determine the function of behavior. And when I talk about functional analysis, I like to compare it to an allergy test. I would ask how many of you are familiar with allergy tests, but again, I can't see you that well, so I'll just assume a couple hands are raised. So an allergy test, they prick you with a bunch of needles, and then, they kind of see what you react to. And based on the reaction, they know how to treat it. That's very similar to a functional analysis. So with functional analysis, we would put the kid in a condition where they get attention for doing the wrong behavior or the undesired behavior. And then we would test and give them escape for the wrong behavior. or the undesired behavior. Then we would give them tangibles for the undesired behavior. And after testing those, we'd see which ones increased the frequency of behavior. After doing so, we know how to treat it. For instance, in this case, our kiddo starts banging his head, and in the first one, we give them attention. We say, "Oh, you're okay. You don't have to do that." But we don't give them escape or tangible. We still make sure they put the toys away. In the escape condition, to test and see if they're doing it just to get out of the task, we won't give them extra attention. We'll run over and block it and then prompt them to put it away, so that they're not getting that escape. In the tangible condition, we might test the tangible. So we say, "Oh, here, you don't have to do it. Here's your toy." And you give them the toy. And you see if that increases the behavior. And again, not the behavior in that moment, because obviously giving them the toy will decrease it for that moment. You're looking at the frequency overall. But then whichever one raises the frequency, you then know how to treat the behavior. So from there, you select a treatment that fits the function of behavior. So for attention, you can do something like non-contingent reinforcement, or NCR, where you give a lot of attention not related to any behavior. So there's low motivation to act up in order to get attention. You could do escape extinction, where again, you're not granting them that escape, where they get to go back to doing what they want just because they engaged in an inappropriate behavior. You prompt them through and you keep them safe and move on to the next thing. Or in the case of tangible, you might use extinction, where again, you're just prompting them through and they don't get the toy back, even though they engaged in, potentially severe behavior. And then I threw this at the bottom, for every function, we also want to teach the appropriate alternative. So giving them functional communication training, or teaching, if you want attention, ask for attention. Come over to me and say, "Hey, I need you for a second." If it's for escape, say, "Hey, I wasn't done playing. Can I have a few more minutes?" Or say it was escape from a math test. You might say, "Hey, I need 10 or 15 minutes. I gotta cool off. I'm overwhelmed by this." Giving the individual that appropriate communication, which then you can reinforce and decrease the competing behavior of engaging in maladaptive or undesired behaviors. So after this, you want to be consistent with the implementation. If you remember back to what I said about schedules, FR1 or continuous schedules are great for building new skills, whereas intermittent schedules, or schedules that aren't consistent, are good for maintaining them. If you are not consistent with what you are doing to treat problem behavior, I hate to say it, but you are making that behavior more resistant. You're letting that behavior maintain by reinforcing it occasionally. So as consistent as you can with the implementation of procedures. And then finally, as the child starts to learn and starts to get this functional communication, you want to fade back. So not as heavy reinforcement. Now you're putting the appropriate behavior on an intermittent schedule, and you're even changing the environment. So you're doing this with other things where they might engage in inappropriate behavior. So this skill generalizes outside of just, the one situation where you taught it. All right, so my next example I had for you guys is toilet training. And I realize I probably need to speed up a little bit. I'm not sure what time we have, but I'll try to go through this one a little quicker. So our individual is 6 and doesn't really show interest in using the toilet. They often hide behind the couch, or won't show reaction at all when they go in their pants. They've always worn a pull-up, and when they're not wearing a pull-up, they consistently have accidents. They scream and yell when they're placed on the toilet. So what do we do in this? Let's go back and start with that assess. So in this first step, we're going to start with assessing readiness. So is the child ready to use the toilet? Can the child balance on a toilet? Are they showing signs of discomfort before they have to use the bathroom? Which in this little guy's case, they probably are, because they're hiding behind the couch to go to the bathroom. Does the parent or caregiver think that toileting is important at this time? Then further, step 2, we have to assess why our kiddo doesn't want to sit on the toilet. So again, this could be a number of things. They could have had a bad experience on the toilet. I'm sure some of you know little ones that have tried to sit on the big boy potty and fallen straight through into the toilet, and then they don't want to sit on the toilet again for a while. The toilet is also kind of like this cold, scary, pretty austere environment where there's not a lot of toys or reinforcers or fun things. So there could be a number of reasons why the kiddo doesn't want to sit on the toilet. After we figure out the reason why they don't want to, you might determine an appropriate form or schedule of reinforcement to get them on the toilet. There's a principle that I didn't really talk about very much, but comes up kind of in these next few steps, which is shaping. So a lot of what we do in behavior analysis is really systematically building skills. In this case, we might start our kiddo sitting on the toilet for just 5 seconds before delivering reinforcement, just so they can get over that initial fear or discomfort, and then, increasing it to 10 seconds, to 30 seconds, to a minute, and building up the amount of time they can sit on the toilet without fear or discomfort of being in that environment. From there, we might take the individual to the bathroom on a set schedule when they close to when they might normally have accidents, and reinforce when they go on the potty appropriately. Throw a party, all the best cookies and stickers, and I've even seen one family I worked with a long time ago would let their kiddo take videos to send to grandma from the toilet, where he could say, "Hi, grandma, look, I'm peeing on the toilet." And grandma would always respond back real quick with a video of her own, encouraging him and cheering him on. So reinforce the heck out of that behavior when they go on the toilet appropriately. Then on the flip side of that, when they have accidents, think back to extinction. There's a chance that some of our kiddos have accidents for attention. I'm sure you have all encountered this with your little ones at some point. We're not going to give them that attention. When they have an accident, we're just going to quietly change them and move on. We're going to let the reinforcement do the work on the appropriate behavior, and we're not going to worry about decreasing accidents. If that works, we're going to do what we did before. We're going to fade out to some natural contingencies. If it doesn't work, we might want to increase our reinforcement. And if we're already giving them the coolest stuff, it may be time to speak to an expert, so a BCBA. The expert will rule out medical causes. Of course, this is an epilepsy surgery conference, so you guys are probably going to rule out the medical causes really early on in the toileting process. From there, we're going to alter the components of toileting, such as the schedule we're going on, the fluid intake. We might add a urine alarm, so a little clip that alerts both the parents and the child to the fact that they're urinating. Some children aren't even sensitive to the fact that they've started urinating or eliminating. So this can alert them to that, as well as alert the parents so they can respond quickly. We can do positive practice, which would be after an accident, repeating the process a couple times of the appropriate behavior to make sure they are getting it and understanding it, or even doing a full intensive toilet training. These often are 8 hours per day for several days until the child starts to show some signs of toilet training. And then we will start to fade back to natural contingencies. That wraps it up for toilet training. I wanted to go on to fixing bedtime routines. So this one can be our kiddo of any age. My kid won't stay in bed. We let him watch TV until he gets tired, and he drifts off to sleep. But it seems like within a half hour every night, he comes out on the couch. We direct him back to bed, but he keeps coming out until finally he'll lay on the couch with us and fall asleep. We then carry him to bed, but at this point, it's already 1 to 2 hours past bedtime. What do we do? It's going to be that same initial step. Assess why your child is coming out of the bedroom. Examine those contingencies that are already occurring. So is your kid waking up and going to the bathroom and then, oh, I'm scared, I need to come out with you guys? Are they getting up because they need a drink, or they went to bed and weren't prepared in some way? Some of these things can be really easy to fix. Depending on why your child is coming out, consider what your options are and come up with what you think the function is. So are they doing it for attention? Are they doing it to escape bedtime? A lot of kiddos don't like to go to bed when you're ready. They want to go to bed when they're ready. So attending to what the function is. Then whatever treatment you pick based on the function, make sure you are consistent and systematic. Some of you might have picked up from the example that, hey, guess what? We direct him back to bed, but he keeps coming out, and eventually we're tired, so we just give in and let him sleep on the couch with us. That's not consistent or systematic. So make sure that as a parent, you are addressing what the function is and making sure you're not giving into reinforcing whatever that function may be. So I wanted to go through one treatment example I really like. And I actually use this with both of my boys because they used to have the problem of getting up and getting out of bed many, many times a night. It's called the bedtime pass. We used a little, a facial washcloth. So a small washcloth, and we wrote bedtime pass on it and decorated it really cute. And that was their bedtime pass. And they got to get out of bed one time whenever they wanted and exchanged their pass. And once they gave up their bedtime pass, any other time after that, they got directed straight back to bed without any attention. On the time where they used their pass, they got about 10 to 15 minutes of attention, and they could get water and go to the bathroom and do whatever they needed. Well, eventually, the kid, again, both of my boys, they realized that, hey, you know what? I'm not getting what I want unless I have the bedtime pass. So I better save it for when I need it. And what they'd often do is end up falling asleep with them holding it right up next to their face because they were hanging on to it in case they needed it, and they didn't need it. They just went to bed. I always like to share this with parents because, like I said, it worked for me. And this is just a great example of easy reinforcement contingencies and extinction contingencies working when you can apply them consistently. All right, so I wanted to do a few skill acquisition things as well. And I stole this quote. It's from Dr. Ivar Lovas, but Goshen City Behavioral Health, where I'm the director, we have it on our website as well because I just love it. If they can't learn the way we teach the way they learn. This again really focuses on individualizing procedures, understanding the functions of behavior, and kind of meeting the kid where they are to increase their skill set. So I wanted to start teaching physical skills. As Jacinda had mentioned in the introduction, we've got to do some really cool things with Richard in increasing his physical skills. I'm hoping to show a couple videos if I have time, but I wanted to start by just going through some of the key points of teaching physical skills. So first, again, we're going to assess, is it a can't do or a won't do? Can the individual really not do whatever the behavior is, or is it that they're not properly motivated to do the behavior? If the issue is a won't do, then you reassess what the individual wants in order to work on that skill, or you reassess what they're motivated by. So it might be changing reinforcers completely or giving them more of a reinforcer. Whenever I'm training new technicians to work with kids, their idea is kind of like, well, a reinforcer is a reinforcer. And I might say like, oh, so you'll, work all week for $1? And they'll say no. And I say, well, money is a reinforcer for you, right? Isn't a reinforcer a reinforcer? And it kind of clicks that, sometimes you have to assess what the value is that's associated with the amount of effort that individual has to do to demonstrate the skill that we're asking them to show. On the flip side, if it's can't do, we need to start analyzing what skills are missing in order to do that task. Once you've identified some of those skills, you start teaching some of those prerequisite skills that are needed to complete that target behavior. You also might task analyze, so break up the task into smaller tasks so that you can reinforce small steps along the way. You want it to, be individualized and make sense for the individual you're working with. For instance, with teaching someone to walk, well, what's a prerequisite skill of walking? Well, you have to have muscular strength. You have to have specific movements your legs can perform. You have to have balance. So you might start with working on something as simple as balancing. Then at the same time, or maybe a little bit later, you start, strengthening those leg muscles by doing some exercises. Then you have to combine those things together, and you're slowly moving that skill further and further along until you're reaching your terminal goal of walking. So again, even when starting with the first task, you want to build up. I, again, had the example of balance, maybe 10 seconds, then 20, then 30. And you want to reinforce that behavior immediately and often. As you work your way up, again, most of us are really good at, reinforcing things that are novel and not delivering some of that reinforcement for things that aren't as cool anymore. So if our kid has been standing for 5 minutes at a time and this time he stands for 30, I'm not going to give him the same level of reinforcement as I would if he had been standing for 5, or if it was his first time standing for 30. You want to work your way up and then thin out how often you reinforce. Again, I was going to stick some videos in there, but I was having a little bit of trouble with my PowerPoint. So hopefully I'll get to show them at the end, but I know I'm running short on time. Again, we're going to go on to the next one. Teaching academic or cognitive skills. You're going to start once again by assessing whether it's a can't do or won't do issue. If it's won't do, you're going to reassess what they're motivated by, what they want to work for. If it's can't do, again, we're going to start at that same spot, try to figure out what prerequisite skills are missing in order for them to do the task. Once you identify and teach those prerequisite skills, again, same thing, we're going to task analyze and break up into smaller tasks. Then we're going to do something slightly different. So once these skills start to develop, we're going to vary the dimensions of the skills. So we're going to change the instructor, the setting, the materials, the reinforcers. We're going to start to generalize those skills out to new settings and new context where it wasn't previously reinforced. This is how you start to get things like asking for things that the individual needs, and you get it in different contexts, because you're going to start varying the way that you make the child ask, or who they're asking, or what they're asking for. You want to build that out with a lot of different teaching materials and exemplars to increase the generality or the individual's ability to generalize their response. Then finally, again, our goal is to always remove ourselves. We want to work ourselves out of a job. So we want to fade to more natural reinforcers, and we're going to increasingly thin schedules. So, taking out more and more reinforcement as the kid gets better and better at the skill. So that's pretty much all I had. I wanted to go through a couple conclusions. ABA can increase independence and dignity. It can do this for everyone. It can be used, there have been some really cool applications with kids with autism, kids with other developmental disabilities. I mean, it has also been used in businesses. It has been used to decrease drug use, to help people quit smoking. It can increase independence and dignity for everyone. It can also be effective for any individual. I said that, ABA is not a bag of tricks, and that's one of the things I wanted you to leave with. And I hope that you really do kind of see the ways that you can combine some things in order to make ABA effective in your life, and you can use it in ways that are useful. I saw that one of the themes of this conference was Together We Climb. And I just wanted to end again by saying thank you for having me. I know I'm going to do some questions here, but before I end my real presentation, just thank you. I was so excited because I do think ABA can make an impact with this community where we haven't had a lot of exposure. And really, I think we're all in this together, and ABA professionals are just always looking for ways we can help. So I really love the slogan, Together We Climb. That's it.
Stand up there. I need to hear you for the microphone. Okay. Yeah.
This doesn't matter.
Just if you hear
I
you
don't
close
do
enough.
public speaking very well. Hi, hello. So I have a 4-year-old. He's about 2 years post left hemispherectomy, and we've been looking into ABA therapy for him because he has a lot of.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
A lot of behavioral kind of things, and we saw him before surgery, seeing them increasingly worsening now after surgery.
Sure.
We live in California. We've gotten a couple of opinions from ABA therapy who most of them have recommended 30 to 40 hours a week. He's 4.
Yep.
Is there any benefit that, in your professional opinion, of doing fewer hours of ABA and still having it make a difference, especially in a child that young? Because right now we're trying to implement some things at home, similar to what you were saying with the reinforcements and things like that. But there's just a lot of aggressive behavior starting, and he's a big 4-year-old, so it's starting to become a lot for my husband and I.
So I'm going to interrupt Michael for a second and say his answer is going to be different from my answer because he started at 4.
Okay.
And it's also different than the answer that has to go on the paperwork to get insurance to cover it.
Well, you and I can talk later, maybe.
So there, now you can have
Okay.
Michael.
Okay.
So my answer, I don't know if it's necessarily different from Jacinda's. Honestly, I do think limited ABA can help. That said, 30 to 40 hours a week is pretty standard. And that actually comes from a study that was done in the 80s and has been replicated a couple times. It was actually one of the studies that put kind of ABA on the map as far as developmental disabilities. They did a group of kids where they received no ABA therapy and a group that received 10 hours of ABA therapy, and then a group that received, and this is a direct quote from the paper, they received 40 hours of ABA therapy, and parents were also trained in ABA techniques so that they were receiving ABA therapy all waking hours of their day, which is a ton, and it is a ton for a 4-year-old, and it will leave your kid coming home tired a lot of the time. But in that group, they had, and I don't remember the exact number, and I think it was 40% of the children in that 40-hour group got integrated back into public schools in typically developing classrooms. That's one of the best results that has ever been published for an ABA outcome, as far as for those big group studies, they're looking for a big outcome like gets back into school. So I guess I kind of want to hedge and say, yeah, we can work on individual things, for 10 to 15 hours a week. And with you doing some at home, you will still see progress. 30 to 40 hours is almost always going to be better. And is going to have a greater impact. And something that I tell some of the parents at our center sometimes, especially, we have some kids right now at our center who are almost ready for school. And the parents say, should we send them to school part-time? And I say, we're right in that crucial developmental stage of like 4 to 6 years old where they're learning a ton, and I just don't want to miss out on any of those opportunities to get that individualized one-on-one learning. That is just going to be typically a higher quality of instruction because it's one-on-one and because it's individualized. So I don't know if that answered your question. Like I said, it's kind of a hedge. You can definitely get success with fewer hours. I just really do believe that the more hours you can get, the better it is.
So I'll piggyback one more quick question. You
Sure.
would say maybe like we're at 4, so we're looking at preschool. We opted out of preschool this year, but we're looking at maybe 4 to 5 preschool next year. ABA would be, again, I know it's you don't know our son, but in your professional opinion, ABA could potentially be a better alternative for preschool, given the behavioral issues that we're seeing, as opposed to sending him to like a special day class or a severely disabled classroom or something similar to that. ABA could be more beneficial in the long run.
I mean, like you said, it's hard to say without knowing your son, but I just kind of always go for that conservative approach, especially with young kids, that individualized instruction that's one-on-one is, I mean, it's almost always going to be classroom instruction, unless it's like the most elite classroom instruction you can get. So, I mean, typically, and again, with kids at our center, we have most of our kids for 30 to 40 hours a week. And for a lot of them, it replaces school until they are showing those other skills, the communication skills, the lack of aggression and self-injury, to where they can transition into a public school and be successful.
I mean, then you also will have kids, like, we know Richard's never necessarily going to be in a standardized public school setting. And for us, ABA therapy, and again, I'm in the position where I actually know them very, very well. The owner of the center started working with Richard when she was 4, when he was 4, when she was just a technician. Moved away, we developed a friendship. She moved back to the area and opened her own center. And now we're sort of sitting here where I know where he's at. I know what their philosophies are. And I can be like, this is by far the better choice, because he literally has 4 different technicians who are at their center who he works with throughout the week, who know him, who are one-on-one with him, who, like, I mean, Michael, literally, because we were having issues with physical therapy, like, we weren't making any progress in physical therapy, they started sending a behavior technician with us to physical therapy, so the behavior technician was working on the behaviors so we could get through physical therapy. And, okay, and they always say, like, Richard did not independently walk until he was just shy of his 13th birthday. We were always told, like, oh, he's not going to walk. He walked independently with their help and them breaking it down and working through the behaviors, like a year, like in September. So, I mean, personally, I'm a huge proponent, but it's also finding the ABA Therapy Center that is actually going to work with you. I feel like they're different in a lot of ways, because we've been at 3 different centers. And like, they very much are not about just, oh, we want to work with the cute little 3, 4, or 5-year-olds who have some mild behaviors that we can just transition into public school. Like, they have a lot of kids who have multiple disabilities. And I guess my biggest thing is just making sure, like, people know that, like, it can work for these kids, and you just have to find the right fit.
Find the piece to the puzzle.
Thank you.
Well,
No
actually,
problem.
Michael's done some great work with Anderson, and the work Michael's done with Anderson has really improved Anderson's ability to interact with his brother and do different things. Like, we've done some really cool things in the past couple of years. So, anything else, anybody? I mean, I obviously have all their contact information, and I'm more than happy to get anybody in touch, even if it's just hey, this is where you can look, or these are good resources. I know in the past, Holly, who is the owner of Goshen City Behavioral Health, I've connected people with her, and even if it's just for, like, okay, like, you're in this state, look here, or, you know, those type of setups. So I feel like in general it gets sort of overlooked, or they think it's just 4 problem behaviors. And honestly, the reason Richard is walking, the reason he can communicate the way he can with his device, is all because we had ABA therapists who were willing to break it down and start working on, like, okay, and I know Michael was saying, like, oh, you have to give them that functional communication, and then you sort of said, you know, the child being able to, like, say, hey, I want to do this, or hey, I need 10 minutes. It doesn't even need to be that. Like, Richard now, like, he could ask for something, and we could be like, oh, not right now, and he'll be like, okay, like, I want this now, you know, and he understands, like, we have this now back and forth, where instead it would be like, he'd say, oh, no, you can't have it, and we get hit, and now he, like, oh, no, like, okay, like, I can get it in a minute, and just teaching those skills, and waiting, or even being able to, like, hey, we know, like, right now he's being a little bit of a jerk, because this is him excited, and he wants daddy to roughhouse with him. But, like, being able to ask that, like, he'll sit there and he'll start, like, slapping at you, and Michael was like, well, why don't we put roughhouse in his device? So now he'll be like, roughhouse Michael, when he wants something. It's like, okay, fine, we're gonna work for 5 minutes, and they'll be working on whatever they're working on, and then Michael likes putting him in headlocks, and or he'll be like, roughhouse dad, or, you know. So it doesn't also have to be these full sentences. It can really work for any level of functioning with our kiddos. So that's my 2 cents. Anything else, Mr. Michael?
All right, if no one has anything else, can you guys see the video?
Not yet. We see you.
All right. How about now?
There we go.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll show a couple. Can you still hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, and I'm just kind of going to narrate. So with Richard, when we started, kind of like how I used the example of balance, we started with him just standing at a table. And then at the same time, we started doing some leg strengthening things. So just like some leg lifts and stretches from a seated position and from a standing position. And before I met him, he was actually already walking with a walker. So we just kind of used that and then started, kind of like I said, to fade out some, fade out how much prompting we were doing and starting to increase the demand in order to get that reinforcer. So this is, I want to say, probably July of 2019, no, 2020. And you can see he's starting to walk pretty good at this point. He's using the rail, so balance isn't all the way there yet. But you can see he's doing pretty good. And this is early on in the process when we've just been doing some leg strengthening and some balance stuff. Oh, let's see if it loads to next video. So from there, we went to some more leg strength stuff. So starting to go up some stairs. And I don't know if you can see, but he's doing this independently. I'm just there to shadow. Again, this is after lots of leg lifts and lots of balance work. So this next video, he's starting to get some of that balance stuff. So you can see I've changed positions a little bit. I'm off to the side, but I can still get to that gait belt if I need to.
Is this September? And again, for Richard, we always knew our goal isn't necessarily he's going to be walking around the community, but to be able to get out of bed and get to the bathroom or around the house, short distances, again, makes it much more functional for him, makes it easier for grandparents or anybody to care for him.
We started with just the balance from that doorway to the chair, and then we started to increase. So you can see this one's the width of the paint on a basketball court. This one we actually missed by a little bit.
We're still trying to figure out, sometimes he veers off, if it's a visual thing, if it's like a more muscle thing, because he's, that right side for him, he's a left-handed, is tight. Trying to gauge why he sometimes like literally just sometimes in circles, right, Michael?
Yeah.
He literally sometimes walks in circles.
So I threw this one in there to see that, or so you guys can see that I'm not helping him out. And then we're actually at a phase where we're a little further than this right now, but this one you can see we've stretched it out. So it's actually about 20 to 30 feet.
Yeah, you know you're up on the TV, mister.
That's me, I'm proud.
Oh, really? Richard's very happy, Michael.
Use the right word.
Richard's biggest reinforcer, if you haven't guessed, is his iPad to watch Mickey Mouse. So that's what he's working for to get, because he doesn't get it at school unless he's doing something big like that.
So yeah, that's just a little demonstration of, how we move up over time, and, that skill walking is a lot of different component skills, and we're breaking it down into balance and strength, and then starting to do some short distances, then longer distances. And, we're still working on some of that stuff at the same time. So we still do leg stretches and leg lifts every day while we're doing the stairs and while we're working on uneven ground and up and down ramps, working on balance at different angles.
Standing waiting for the elevator, pushing the button,
Yeah.
running the elevator
Yep.
down.
Yeah, so I just wanted to share that because I thought it was a good demonstration of a little bit of what we talked about.
Honestly, I feel like that's one of the best. So that and his language, the ability of ABA to be able to work with your other therapies and your other therapist and actually make this like synergistic gains for your child. And we've been very, very lucky, and maybe because I just don't let it go. But we've also had great therapists and on both sides willing to be like, you know what, yeah, let's work together because that's what's going to be better for this kid. So. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
No problem. So
And will you share the slides?
I can do that.
Okay.
I sent them to Monica
She
just
has
a little bit ago.
Okay, then she'll probably share them. And
Yeah.
And I know I'm more than happy to connect you guys with either Holly or Michael if you have questions or anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. My email is just Michael at Goshen City BH. So Goshen City Behavioral Health, Goshen City BH. Feel free to reach out with any questions or any follow-up. And I'm happy to sit down and take some time and talk through stuff with you. Like I said, it's just really an honor to get to share ABA with a different community and, talk about some of this stuff that I'm so passionate about with new people.
I'm trying to convince him that he needs to start looking at maybe some research stuff with our kiddos. Because what he focuses on mainly is toilet training.
Oh, yeah.
And I really think there is a wealth of data and knowledge that could be shared in that.
No, I'd love to do some stuff with toilet training. Yeah.
Just get your PhD defended and then we can.
I'm so close. I sent my second draft to my advisor like earlier this week. So
Yes.
we're getting there.
Okay, Michael, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
We'll see
Take care.
Probably Wednesday. Oh, no, you're off next week.
Nope, I'm back.
Okay, we'll see you Wednesday then.
Sounds good.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.